Hi, I'm Larry Mishler, and we're going to be talking about a picture in a minute. And it's on photography before digital, and it's through Larry's lens. Okay, picture in a minute. What do you mean? Why does it take so long? A minute? Well, back in the days, a long time ago when film was available, you didn't have pictures in a minute. And when you talk about pictures in a minute or Polaroid, you have to talk about Edwin Land, who was the inventor of all this, a real genius, a real unbelievable guy. And he was about the same age as my dad, and I was able to meet him, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. But he started in about 1932, and he and another guy did Land Wheelwright Laboratories, and what they were noted for and what they did was to make Polaroid glasses. And they were the inventor of the Polaroid glasses. So when you see those, it's all because of him way back in 1932. 1937, they renamed the Polaroid Corporation because they wanted, to be more identified rather than Land Wheelwright, which didn't make much sense to anybody. Anyway, during the Second World War, they made dark adaptation goggles, and they made target finders for airplanes, and they did smart bombs. They did all kinds of really weird stuff, and he was truly a genius. They did a process called vectographic that helps find enemy camouflage positions in aerial photographs, so they could go and put these lenses like you have in your sunglasses, the polarized lenses, at different angles, and they'd shoot the things and they'd compare them, and they could actually see the camouflage from the enemy. So it was a really big deal. So he had a big deal with the military. Well, after the war, he and his daughter were in vacation in New Mexico, and they were taking a bunch of pictures and things. And his daughter said, "Dad, let me see the pictures." And he tried to explain to her, well, we have to develop the film, and then we have to print the negatives and so forth. And at his 3 years old, she didn't understand. She said, "Dad, why can't you make pictures in a minute?" And so, 1948, 3 years later, Professor Land came up with the Polaroid Land camera, a Model 95. And they made that camera until 1983. It's kind of funny because they made 57 cameras to start with, and this is 1948, just before Christmas. And they went down to Jordan Marshall's department store, I believe that's in Boston, and they had all these cameras set up, and they figured that they'd have enough. Well, they sold out the first day. So they were just amazed. And the thing is, the pictures kind of had a sepia tone, and a lot of people looked at them and they thought, it's just a gag. It's not going to last. But as time went on, the sepia color disappeared, and they were able to figure out the dyes to make them a good black and white. So the Model 95 camera was very similar to this. Now, this camera came out in 1954, and this was truly an impressive camera because it used the same body as a Model 95, but this is called the 110. This is a 110A, which is the second model, which had a real live lens. This lens is a Rodenstock lens, and it had a lot of features to it, like it had shutter speeds and f-stops, and it had a way to focus it, and it was really a more of a professional camera. Hence, they started into the commercial market. So, as it went, in 1954, they came out with this, but they also came out with another camera, which I don't have in my collection, but it was called a Highlander, and it was a little bit smaller. And let's see if we can find it. Oh, okay, here's a picture of one. Yeah, this is one that I really liked because it was a little less expensive, and it had a lot of capabilities. A couple of years later, they came out with the same film that actually was a transparency film, and I happen to have one. I shot this in I think it's 1955. This is a picture of my dad, and it's really sharp, and it has lasted without any preservation for that length of time. Several things happened. They came out with nice pictures, and you'd take the picture and you pulled out this long piece of paper, ripped it off, threw it away, and then you waited 60 seconds. After you take the picture, you would go and pull out this tab of a long paper, tear that off, throw that away, and then after 60 seconds, by the clock, you'd open it up and take your picture out. But that wasn't all. Then you had to take this little dip-it thing and open it up. It has a plastic coating on here. And what you do is you'd apply this to the surface of the print. That would keep it permanent. If you didn't do that, this is what happened. And it would fade if you didn't cover it. So this is one that hasn't been adequately preserved. Okay, also they came up with another little thing, and it kind of precedes the electronic flash, but it was electronic. It's called a wink light. And this would fit on here, and when you take the picture, you could use this little light. It wasn't real bright, but what they would say, it brightens shadows in normally room lighting and allows 15 seconds to recharge. So it was a pretty neat camera. It was also a very commercial thing, and it was very successful. I didn't get this camera till about 10 years ago, and because they were extremely expensive. This was about the same price. This was about $100 less than the Linhof that I had. So that was quite a bit. Okay, well, another thing that happened is that about 1954, Professor Land first discovered a two-color system, or he kind of invented it. But he figured out how to do that. He could take two black and white images, identical, project them with two different projectors through two different light sources, and get full color. Now, when I went to a convention with my dad in Los Angeles, I got to see some of Dr. Land's, some of his projections. And I thought, okay, they're nice color pictures, so what? I didn't understand. I was about 14 at the time, so I didn't really understand what a revolutionary thing this was. And I'm not sure how it was ever been used, but it was a phenomena that was really kind of, it was amazing. So take two black and white pictures and turn them into full color. That was amazing. Okay, in the camera shop, we would go and we used a camera similar to this, and we'd use that for passport pictures and things like that. And people were really kind of amazed, and it was a really revolutionary thing. Commercially, they started making a 4x5 back. This is a 4x5 Polaroid back. It didn't use a roll film, it used sheet film. And what it would do, instead of the, the film holder, as we talked about previously, it would use the same position, and you would load the sheet film in there and then put it down to load and pull out the packet. Take your picture, push it back in, push it down to load, pull it out, and then let it develop for 60 seconds and peel it apart. Now, they first started off with just regular black and white film, but then they came up with a little polymer insert into it that was the negative, and you could actually have a negative and a positive. And there were several articles that were here's a Peterson's Photography magazine from 1977, March 1977, and it has a story in here about the new Polaroid Type 105 PN film. The PN stands for positive negative. And it talks about the first time you use Type 105, you might be tempted to forget about the negative and keep the print, because it was really a high resolution, really high quality film. But the negative was also extremely fine grained, fine detailed, and you can make beautiful enlargements from that. This is what got Ansel Adams interested in a little bit about this. Even though he was a 8x10 photographer, he was a little bit interested in photography from Polaroid. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, the film actually developed, Professor Land was just an amazing guy. And most film was a relatively slow speed. If you'd say ISO about 100 was normal at that time. Tri-X film from Kodak was about 400 or 320. And the Polaroid film came out with not only the slower speed stuff, but they also had a 3000 speed film. And it was pretty amazing. But the thing is, when you load your Polaroid camera with 3000 speed film and you want to take a picture outside, oh, the camera was not capable. Okay, with the 3000 speed film, if you wanted to take pictures outside, you had to use something like this little adapter. And it came with the camera for the 3000 speed film. And it says 4S light reducer for 3000 film outdoors. And that would place over the lens like this. So then you could go and take pictures outside and not overexpose them. Okay, shortly after that, they came out with color film, and it was really kind of neat because first of all, a few years before that, all they had was the sepia colored, and that wasn't a big deal. So then they thought, okay, black and white, that's good. Okay, high quality black and white, oh, that's even better. Then they went to color, and Professor Land came up with a new way of exposing the color film, and it was great. So, early 70s, he was walking through the park one day with his granddaughter. I think he was in his 60s then, and he was with his granddaughter, and they were walking through the park in Rochester, New York, and they were going along, and someone had been taking Polaroid pictures, and when they tore the thing off, they just threw it on the ground, and they were taking a lot of pictures, so there was all this trash all over. And she looked down, she picked it up and said, "Grandpa, is this your film?" And he said, "Well, yeah, well, that's film we made." She said, "Can't you make a film that doesn't have so much trash? Because look at what it did to the beautiful park." Well, he got to scratching his head again, and he went back to his lab, and he took his three best engineers and said, "Okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to develop a product a film that has no trash or very, very little trash. And I think he gave him 3 months or 4 months or some. Anyway, they came back to him after that length of time. They'd worked and worked and worked on it. And they came up to him and they said, "It can't be done." And he said, "What?" And he said, "Well, I'm sure it can be done." So he was really kind of frustrated about that. So he was known for being able to go back into his lab and work for hours and hours and almost nonstop, and until he fell over asleep, and then he'd wake up and he'd work some more. And in fact, he had to have food brought into him, and people would say, "You got to eat now, otherwise you're going to collapse." And so within 2 weeks, as I understand it, he developed the SX70. Now, this is what I'd like to show you is the SX70. This was probably the most revolutionary thing because it encompassed a whole bunch of chemistry, optics, and everything that was just truly phenomenal. And he did this in just a few months. Through Larry's lens, we'll be right back.
Hey, I know you're in here. It's time we study for the exam.
Oh, hey. I'm just a little tired.
That's okay. Let's get some protein and some music and get going. There's nothing in here.
I know.
When's the last time you got groceries, Beth?
You know my budget?
I know, you still owe me from last week. But you can't get through finals without food. Wait.
What?
Come with me.
Where are we going? My hair is a mess. What are we doing here?
You'll see.
Have you heard about Pitchfork Pantry? Any student can get the free food they need, as well as toiletries and cleaning supplies.
We're an organization founded by ASU students to help eliminate food insecurity across all ASU campuses.
We partner with local food banks and team up with volunteers to get needed supplies to ASU students. We even deliver, though sometimes it's good to come by in person.
Hey,
Thanks.
you're welcome.
Hey, and we're back. And while you were gone, I was able to score this SX70 from a good friend of mine and a guy that I work with, a historical architect by the name of Don Ryden. And he found this in a pawn shop. And we'll go through this, and I was able to find some film. Now, when I first started looking for film for this SX70, the only place you could get it was from somewhere in Europe, I think in Brussels, where the people that used to work for Polaroid, when they closed down this SX70 thing, they bought the patents or something, and they started manufacturing the film under the Polaroid name. But recently, I've discovered that this film is available on Amazon, many places on the web, and my own Tempe camera repair place, they have it in their freezer. And it comes in either black and white or color. So I was just really taken back that it is really easy to get a hold of. It's about $20 for a roll. Originally, it was about $4 to $5 for a package of this, but that was in 1972 when the camera first came out. I was able to find a Life magazine issue. It has my dad's name on it because he was always he loved Life magazine. In fact, we all did, because it was a great photographic venue. Anyway, they did a picture on the front cover of Dr. Land, and he was they called it A Genius and His Magic Camera. And truly, in 1972, this was over 50 years ago. Whew. Anyway, they had done this article on him, on all of his stuff, and one of the things that I was impressed with as I read the article, it said that photography at the time was a $4 billion a year industry, and Kodak was the giant compared to Polaroid, and now it's actually Kodak is probably a minor name in the photography industry, because everything is switched to cell phones and other media. So anyway, this is an interesting article. If you ever get to the library or perhaps online, you can see it. It's the October 27th issue, 1972. And this is almost as old as my car that I'm restoring, 71 MG. Anyway, one of the important things that happened here is that a lot of professionals started using this, and you can see from some of these pictures in here that the professionals started to take this SX70 pretty seriously. And this got the attention of a guy by the name of Ansel Adams, I'm sure everybody knows. And he came out with a book called Ansel Adams' Polaroid Land Photography. And I was able to find this online the book originally sold for $17.50, and I was able to get this for $14. So, hey, not everything's gone up in price. But this is a very interesting book because Ansel Adams tried to pair this with his zone system, and it's really an interesting book. It's a lot of read, and I have not gotten through the whole thing yet. But anyway, it's a great book if you want to read about why he got into the Polaroid photography. He did not only the SX70, but he did the large format. Here's a picture of Land in his large photography. They did up to, I think, 8x10, and in fact, there's even bigger ones now that use the Polaroid system of making prints. So let's look in here. This is a really nicely done. It's a cowhide, real leather, and the camera is not what you'd think of a camera. It doesn't look like a camera. A lot of people looked at this and said, well, that's a camera? And inside the case was a place for flash bulbs. This is the Sylvania Super Flash bar that plugs into the top there, and for a roll of film. And I discovered after I had borrowed this and gotten the color Polaroid that my friend architect had a roll of black and white in here. I don't know what the date is on it, but it's for the SX70. And I was looking for a date. Oh, wait a minute, there's one. Oh, 97. Well, it's probably outdated, as we did on that other, or as we'll do on that other thing. Okay, let's take a look at what this is. Now, the SX70 I was looking for the instruction book. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, here it is. Got it. Okay. The SX70 instruction book is quite detailed because they use photographs. Yeah, people don't read a lot, but they do look at the pictures. So they have a pictorial instruction book. And on the inside, what to do and what not to do. They have some red lines through the pictures, kind of like the stop signs that you see. Don't stop here, stop here. Anyway, the camera is very interesting because it was a revolutionary thing, and the Life magazine article also described it as, this is a phenomenal thing. It's not only the film, but the camera itself, because the camera itself opens this way, by the mere fact it's a single lens reflex. In other words, what you look through is what you see. What you see in the viewfinder is what you actually get. And there's a focusing place here and one to make it lighter and darker. Now, it's not real sophisticated as far as f-stops or anything like that, but it does have a lighter and darker function. And I was going to show you the inside of the thing here and show you this camera. Not only was the film exceptional invention, but the camera was too. The light comes through the lens, and there's a Fresnel mirror there, and a permanent mirror, and a concave mirror, and a whole bunch of things to take the image and actually turn it around so that when it hits the film, it's not backwards. Because as you know, when an image goes through the lens, it's actually backwards to when it strikes the film, it's actually backwards to what you see. So they have done this. He figured this out in a couple of weeks, and it's just an amazing piece of work. Now the way this works is, I showed you how you open it. It has a thing here on the front. You open it there, and we're going to open this. Oh, and it looks like there's a whole bunch of instructions on the inside in about 40 different languages, which I only do one, and that not very well. Anyway, there we go.
But you've done this.
I've done this before. It ain't what you do, it's how you do it. Oh. Okay, the batteries, as I said, the batteries are contained in the film pack itself. So when you open up the door to put the film in, and you close it, voila. Just like the one I'm going to show you in just a little while, the 600, this operates very similar the same way. But this was the original picture in a minute, no waste camera. This is the only part that you waste. And it says, insert this film side, do not remove this dark slide. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go outside and take some pictures. And out it pops. Oh, it's working. Okay, now that we've taken all the pictures, let's take a look, and after they develop, we'll see what they look like. Remember when we talked about some of the cameras before, we talked about how they were developing them so they were smaller and smaller so you could put them in your pocket. Well, these things you can't put in your pocket unless you really have a big pocket. So what they did is they developed these nice little cases. You can see these cases over here, and yeah, they were trying to figure out how to market a big camera, and they're heavy. This is one of the later models. And they developed several kinds of film packets to where they could go and load the camera with the film packet, and it made it very easy. It made it very easy to take pictures. Like this one, still a bellows camera. See the bellows there? And what it would do is it would make really nice color photographs. One of the problems that they had, and you'll notice this little thing in here, a lot of people live in cold weather climate. I don't happen to, but many people do. And so they had this cold clip. So how this would work is that they tell you to put it in your suit coat or somewhere and warm it up next to your body or in the house or something like that. Take the picture, put it in here, and hold it in here for 60 seconds inside the cold clip. And that would make it so that you could develop your picture. Otherwise, the picture would come out like, looking kind of like this. Now, other camera companies have kind of gotten up on things, and what they did is they developed these things for Polaroid. Like here's a Sylvania flash bar. This goes on the flash attachment, and it's automatic. It has 10 little lamps in there, and these things sold. You get 2 of these for about $5. In 1970, that was kind of expensive, but people bought them anyway. So, but they were nice. This is one of the more difficult cameras to operate. But we had several others that were easier. Okay, some of the easier cameras to use is like the One Step. This actually belongs to my cameraman. And what you would do is you would open it up and place the cartridge in. We just happen to have an Instant Idea film pack for the 600. We'll see if it works. The battery is also contained in the film pack. So when you close this, it comes out. That's the only thing you throw away. And then you go, and after the battery charges up, you take a picture, and out it comes. And in 60 seconds, we should see if we get anything. And okay, if we look at the picture, on the back side, you see this little capsule, and that is where the chemicals are contained, and there's 2 rollers inside that as this thing is emitted, it spreads the chemicals on the surface of the print and starts to develop. I'm not sure we're going to get an image because over time, this was expired in 2006. So we're about 14 years late. So now, I understand that pictures or film is available for a lot of these cameras. In fact, the Spectrum system, which this used and the Spectrum cameras used, this is a 600 series Spectrum. They made several different things. If you had a price range, they had a camera for it. So they would go ahead and here's another Spectrum camera. Now this is a Spectrum series, and this was quite a camera. In fact, this was featured in the James Bond film License to Kill in 1989, where they go and where the guy that does all the inventions in the lab and James Bond were in there, and they pointed this at them, and it took a picture and it showed their X-rays. So, but it was this camera that they used in that series, so it was kind of fun. It had a lot of things to it. It had a autofocus, which is one of the first autofocus cameras. It also had a flash that was contained in there, and it actually became quite an interesting little thing because it would fold up, and it had a little handle here, so it was kind of a compact little thing. One of the things that Land did, if you'll notice the strange shape, the lens focuses on a mirror which turns the image around and projects it on the paper. Well, because of this system, Kodak started making the film for them from 1963 to 1969. They made Polaroid's film. After that, Polaroid decided that they were going to make their own, and so they consequently did. After the Kodak quit making Polaroid film, they decided they were going to start making their own film and their own cameras for instant photography. This is an ad from 1977. Kodak in a flash. New Kodak instant flash units for the Kodak instant cameras are here. So Kodak started making instant cameras. In fact, I happen to have one of them right here. This is a Kodak Pleaser. And what it would do is you load it into a cartridge, and then you take the picture, and then you turn the crank, and it would come out the top. I have this camera because they quit making film for it. Why did they quit making film? Well, in 1976, Kodak got sued. They sued for $12 billion. And because they said, you know, you're stealing our patents. And they said, no, we have a different way. Well, one of the things that they did differently, they had a different way of formulating the image. Notice there's no mirror in here. Well, you can't see a mirror in here, but they had direct to the film, and somehow they would go through the back, and that way the image would be on the front of the film, right reading. They didn't have to use a mirror. So, and Kodak said, wait a minute, you know, our film is similar, but really we project through the back. Well, it was a 14-year legal battle. And in 1991, the Kodak was found guilty on 7 of the 12 patent infringements. But they didn't get their $12 billion, but they did get 909 million, almost $1 billion. And it came out to be 925 million that Kodak had to pay out with interest. So it darn near bankrupt Kodak. It gave an infusion of cash to Polaroid so they could do a lot of other stuff. But they really did have a problem. And Kodak, if it hadn't been for their movie cameras and their movie film and their processing labs, would have probably gone bankrupt. In later years, they did go bankrupt as it was. So this camera was not a pleaser, not for Kodak anyway. They had the Kodak handle, and they had several other things. But Kodak was trying to sell their SX70. That was their main line, and this is their beautiful camera. And their film was still being sold for 4x5. They came out with an 8x10 version, which is a huge thing. It's like a tank, and that will fit into an 8x10 view camera. And I understand there's one camera in the world still, it's a 20x24-inch Polaroid camera, or a Polaroid adapter for that camera. And I inquired about that, and anybody can lease it. It's I think $2,500 is the going price on it. But the film was rather limited because they quit making it. So, this was a very popular camera. This was actually a little wider film than the one steps, and so it was a little larger picture. But in 2008, Polaroid quit making the film. So 2 years later, a whole bunch of employees from Polaroid got together, and I guess they rented the patents or borrowed the patents, and they went to the Netherlands, and they started a project that was called the Impossible Project, and they made film for the camera. I was just informed that this year they have stopped making the film for the Spectre series camera, so that's going to be gone. But you can still buy it on eBay. I've seen some places that still have it. The problem with this is you got to make sure that the film is kept really cold, so that the little pods that are in the film itself don't dry up, because when they dry up, well, you don't get much of a picture. Or is this the picture? Hard to say. There's a sequence camera. There's several things that Polaroid helped develop. I'm going to put these over the side here. And here's a sequence camera that was made by a different company, but it has a Polaroid back on it. And it had a viewfinder on the front that you go and what would happen with this is that you cock the shutter, you put the film in, you pull out the lever, and you get ready to take the picture. Now, if you heard that, if you listen real carefully, all 8 shutters go off. And here's a picture of a golfer swinging the club. It takes 8 pictures in sequence. It's kind of interesting. Now, it also has how fast it will operate. Like, that's very fast. Or if it has a slower speed. So, anyway, it's kind of a neat camera, and it only has some very impractical uses, but mostly for scientific part. So we've discovered that Pictures in a Minute and Polaroid and Edwin Land and Amazing Man, and how everybody went from developing and printing their pictures to using Polaroids. Not everybody, but a lot of people did. And a lot of people would go and use, commercially, if a photographer set up a lot of catalog stuff, and they had an art director that wanted to see a proof on this, they could go and they could throw in the Polaroid back and use that, and they'd say, oh, I need to move this or move that. And so then they go and then use their large 8x10 color transparency film, which was probably $30 a shot. And other photographers, when they discovered that they could get these 8x10 backs, they went out and used Polaroid, because you could go and make a shot in a scene, develop the thing right there and look at it and still have a negative of what you were doing. So it was a real advantage to a lot of photographers that way. They've come up with several things. They have, as I said, they spend a lot of time and energy on doing different things. I think this is a little swinger here. One of the things I wanted to talk about was the name Professor Land. Okay, these are all up until the time that he resigned from CEO of the company. They were all called Polaroid Land cameras. One day I was in the camera shop and I was trying to sell a Polaroid Land camera to a couple that were going on a cruise. And they really liked the camera, and I took some pictures of them, and they thought, oh, this is really neat. And then the woman stopped and paused, and she says, well, I'm not sure that we'll be able to use this. And I said, well, why not? It's pretty simple to use. And she said, well, we're going on a cruise and we'll be on the boat. Will the land camera work? And that was the perception. Most people didn't know what the land camera meant. They thought it was a land camera. I assured her that it would work on a boat and that Professor Land would forgive her if she took it on there. So they ended up buying the camera and they had a great time on their cruise. And she came back and showed me some of the color photographs she had. On the later cameras, they put timers on them because not everybody carries around a watch. And that was one of the critics of that. Just like some of them had meters and some of them had automatic things, so that they wanted to make photography as simple as possible. So when Professor Land's daughter said, Daddy, how come I can't see the pictures now? Well, years later, she was able to see them instantly. So that is my collection of Polaroid cameras, and I hope that you will, hope you enjoyed this. And I tell you what, join us on the next one. We're going to be doing flash. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is made in Netherlands. See that?
Oh wow, that's one of the, yeah.
So, and this,
That's great.
this was used before 1989.
That's so funny.
This
how
was
far back that goes.
used before 1989. This is 19. And the thing is, if you keep it in your refrigerator, it will last a long time.